crime and cars seem to go hand in hand, Peter. There's all kinds of movies, that I've got here. We opened up with Bullitt, one of the greatest chase scenes of all time. Right. Jim, I think, may argue that it's not the greatest, but everybody knows about it. What do you make of this combination of automobiles and crime?
I think it's a match made in heaven. I mean, you need to escape rapidly, and there's people with Tommy guns chasing you. I mean, it's just magic.
You've got a movie, one of your favorites, Vanishing Point, which is the driving of the car starts the crime.
Exactly.
Which is pretty intriguing. I mean...
Yeah, and I agree with Jim that it's not the best chase scene, but it's the
You're talking about Bullitt now.
Bullitt, yes, I'm sorry. Bullitt is not the best chase scene, but it's the first of its kind, and it spawned all these other some movies that were nothing but chase scenes.
Well, Bonnie and Clyde, I mean,
Sure.
And the letters to Henry Ford.
Mm-hmm. From Dillinger.
Well, didn't Clyde Barrow write him one, too?
I think he might have. But you're right. The criminals loved Fords because he did this relatively...
He had the V8?
He had a V8. Car was fast.
But the good guys in the Ford in Bullitt, the bad guys are in the Dodge Charger.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but...
Details.
Although
here's an example, though, again, of a movie where it's a great chase scene, not the best, but a great chase scene that led to even better chase scenes.
Which movie now you're talking
Bullitt.
about?
I know we've talked about a bunch. Getting back to Bullitt, the original here. Great chase scene, but try to sit through the whole movie. The ending just keeps going on and on and on. Steve McQueen, a good action film actor, but he would have made a great silent film star, and he almost is in this movie. And so it's not the only reason you watch that movie is for the chase scene.
Okay, most chase scenes and most cars of the type that we're talking about are big performance cars. But talk about the Italian Job, and there's two versions of that, and polar extremes.
There's only one version. We don't count the second version.
You don't count the new one. You're
no, that's
about
awful.
The early
that's a
one.
commercial.
Yeah, but Charlize Theron was in the second one.
That's a redeeming characteristic. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I mean, come on,
But the Italian Job, the premise, first of all, of having, it's so bizarre. The Red Chinese want a Fiat plant in China, so they decide to pay for it with gold. They fly into Torino, and these British criminals, masterminded and funded by Noel Coward in an English prison, they basically go get Harry Palmer, Michael Caine, to get a bunch of minis and steal the gold and put it in minis. They shut down the traffic computer in Torino, and the chase scene in it is amazing. The driving is phenomenal. There's a scene where they were driving the minis onto a ramp to get them inside a bus, a tour bus. And they filmed it at real speed at about 60 miles an hour. And if you think about the physics of taking the car, and it's a front-wheel drive car, which probably helped, getting it up the ramp, pulling it in, and stopping so you can get two more minis in behind it, it's amazing driving. They're jumping them from roof to roof with rather unsatisfactory explanation of how they got to the roof.
Yeah, well, and see, here's another example. It all leads to that chase scene. It's all about the chase scene in this case.
But any movie that starts with the destruction of what was then a brand new, or close to it, Lamborghini Miura is pretty amazing when it drives into a bulldozer and the bulldozer dumps it off the road.
It
like,
makes
wow.
a lot of car guys cringe just the way a lot of car guys cringe at the race in Vanishing Point between the Dodge Challenger and the Jaguar E-Type. So, especially the British car guys, they hate those movies.
Because all the British cars get smashed up.
Pretty much.
Smashed up. And the truth is, a lot of the British cars wouldn't be going that fast because they'd be leaking oil all over the ground. Oh, sorry.
If you got them started.
And what's this one, the 7-Ups? That's on our list here.
Okay, Bullitt was produced by Philip D'Antoni, and the guy that drives the Charger in Bullitt is a guy by the name of Bill Hickman, who's an actor that also is a stuntman. Hickman was the guy that basically did a lot of the choreography, if that's the term, for the chase in, I've just blanked out on it.
French Connection?
French Connection.
Yes, which we need to talk about.
We do. And French Connection to me doesn't quite count as a car chase because a car versus an elevated train is not a chase.
Well, but it's a chase.
It's not a chase.
It may not be well, first of all, there are cars on an elevated train. So it is a car
please!
But secondly, it's a chase. There's also Gene Hackman in the 1971 Pontiac, or four of them they used for that chase scene, under the L train. And I think the way it's cut, the way it's shot is very compelling. Very nice pacing in that chase scene. That's one of my favorites.
But after that, they did a film. D'Antoni produced a film with Roy Scheider in it, and it's basically about a special police unit in New York City. And there is a chase scene in there, shot in Manhattan, and then it goes across the GWB, and I think it goes up the Jersey Turnpike, but I'm not sure which of the turnpikes it is. The chase is filmed It's never they never undercrank it. Undercranking is where they film slowly so it speeds it up. It's all shot at real speed. Sometimes they were going very fast in traffic. They hit the same poor little Opal twice, but that's a whole other story. Hickman drives
the door
it.
flies open and they knock the door off.
Yeah, they knock the door off. But the chase it's an astonishing chase. The story is rather gritty, and it was rated R, and it's a little bit on the tough side to watch. But it really is a good job of Pontiac versus Pontiac in a chase. And
it came out in 1973, 2 years after the French Connection. Roy Scheider actually plays the same character based on a real character that he played in the French Connection, where he was Gene Hackman's kind of his sidekick.
It's a pseudo-sequel. It's one of those movies, it's worth seeing, but it's definitely on the gritty side, and the chase is darn good. Especially,
it's my favorite, too.
Especially when the hood is blown off the car by the shotgun, and that's setting it up for something that happens later in the chase that I won't talk about.
We have to watch
don't want to
the
give it
movie.
away.
Don't give it away.
Don't want to give it away,
What else
folks.
is on your list?
Racing, Peter.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
really good racing movies and some really poor racing movies, too.
Well, absolutely. My personal favorite is Grand Prix, because Grand Prix is responsible for launching, I contend, for launching a lot of driving careers. Guys,
You're right.
my age became totally
Enamored of the whole idea of racing after watching Grand Prix.
And you talk to Bobby Rahal, and he'll say the same thing. And I went over to England to race cars after I saw Grand Prix, followed by Le Mans with the real footage of the actual race footage with real cars and real accidents that caused some people some bad injuries. But I think those two are the classics. But there were some bad ones, like the Elvis Presley one, Speedway.
Jim's, you just hurt Jim. I think he likes that one.
However, I will say this about Speedway. The Cobra he used in that ended up being run by a driver by the name of...
Spinout.
Yeah.
That's Spinout, not Speedway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spinout. It ended up being raced in the Central Division A production.
Right. Successfully.
In the late 60s, driven by a guy by the name of Bill Hurd. But that was Hurt, and that was from Spinout.
When you talk about racing movies, you go back, before sound films, when they would go and photograph races, there are pictures of astonishing races that took place in Europe in the teens because they got a motion picture camera and they would shoot these things. This was also when they were doing extremely long Grand Prix that would go like 14, 15-mile laps. Some they would go from town to town. And when you watch a montage of old racing footage like this, the first thing you notice is that the cars started crashing at they crashed at low speeds, and people got out, tipped the cars over, and drove off. And as the cars got faster, they stopped doing that. But the first modern racing movie that I think is worth watching is a film called To Please a Lady. And it was shot on location during the Indy 500 for 1950, Clark Gable and Barbara Stanwyck.
I remember that.
Yeah. It is really a great movie that captures Indy racing at that time, and it does a very, very good job. It has a lot of the hokey drama beforehand when he's the driver that kills guys, so he's got a bad reputation. He has to race down in sort of the minor leagues of fair racing. But it's really a very, very it's a well put together film, and it's got great footage in it.